So I'm just starting a full tune, one speaker at a time. This is the right tweeter. The red line is the proposed true target. That's a pure sound going through the difference filter at the listening position, main listening position, and the green was the actual measured response at the listening position, and the grey is the correction. And these small little intervals here, these little white lines, just nothing in 1 dB. So you can see that's only 1 dB down at say 7 or 8, and 1 dB more at 12 to 20. So this is my left 3-inch dome. The red is the ideal true target, and yes, my slope is a right-leaning band pass. That's just how I do things around here. It's to create sort of a softer blend to the 6-inch whilst not distorting the 3-inch. So the 6-inch has the opposite lean to compensate, and it all nulls to perfect because they're linear phase in theory. In practice, there's probably nothing linear about it. Here we have the green response. Was measured at MLP before perfect correction. So here this perfect correction is saying, and I had to adjust the scale, get a lot of, what's that, 18, so almost 16 dB, heading up to that 6K, 4.5K. Let's see if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I just run with it, see what happens. I see what the right hand side says, and we'll just keep going with that. And here is them displayed without the gain matching in the graph, just for interest. Here's the right hand 3-inch dome. Red is ideal MLP response with a perfect 3-inch, and green is actual MLP through the 3-inch. And as you can see in a second, this extra high shelving where I've just cut off the limits doesn't actually affect the outcomes. So here is them not stacked together, and here is the noise going through the bandpass filter. So the bandpass filter kind of negates all that shelf up and beyond the limits. But this one is not as severe as the left because the scale stayed at 12. So halfway along we've got 6, 7, 8 tops of gain going up through that band pass. And if I just quickly go back here, you can see on that scale here, that's hard to see, but here they're only needing about 6 to 8 to get this ideal bandpass. So my ideal bandpass and my high mids don't agree with each other. That's basically the bottom line. And on one side we had to go up past 12 dB boost, 16, 17 in one spot. And on the right hand side we only need 6 or 8. But that's okay because we're not hitting it with the lower limits of the driver, we're hitting it with the upper limits of the driver. And we'll see how that plays out. So this is the right 6-inch, and just so everybody knows, I have my 6 inches kind of on a off axis, a less optimal kind of delivery, and they're steered by different methods of absorption, and it's really just to lift the stage height and have 60 to 100 hertz in the front stage. And so that's why I have such a correction. It's on the right hand side as well, the closest speaker. So as you can see, a lot of the high frequencies don't quite make it to the MLP as good, and that's a good 6 dB chunk of energy put into that to compensate for all of that. But needless to say, I'm happy with the sound, and this method is showing me that the MLP ideal is red. The MLP is now missing that 6 dB in the top. and the ideal MLP is giving it back. So that's why we have the big uplift there. This is left 6-inch, and even though it looks like a Rocky Mountain roller coaster, it's not so different from the right. So the right, you could say, has a little less cabin influence, and then the left is further away, a bit more cabin influence. And also my build discrepancies are all over the shop, but that's neither here nor there. But the proof will be in the listening, and this is kind of like my only second full per speaker go at this. So we'll see if those bumps and humps, those bumps and humps are indicative of the asymmetrical seating position, and because the philosophy is you see through the room, that little red is expected and yet ignored, and we want that bump to come. Whether it's a bump or a double dip, we don't know. Something like that. Getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I like to check the 3 ranges I've done, starting with the 6. Sounds pretty centered to me. With all that 12 and such roller coasters, you have to pick a middle line gain adjustment, because you're doing this versus that, so you have to do a manual level correction at the end. High mid, it's a little bit that way, so level correct this way a bit later. Together, you can hear the tones coming together, and the tweeters weren't much off perfect. Probably a little bit hot. But yeah, those two are pretty good. So that was just me getting ahead of myself. Let's do the 8s, shall we? So here's my take on the whole bass repeatable moving measurement microphone techniques and the Magic Beans technique philosophy. They suggest just doing an MLP and don't do the NF. And here is a good example of why a lot of that might hold true. This red line is I call spherical, which is from my head to the speaker but in a circle around the speaker. So you're getting a little bit of the center of the car and a little bit of space around it. Another one is what I call big box, the red here. Big box is from my head almost to the steering wheel in a big box, almost down to my belly button, and almost to the ceiling. And then we'll go through these other ones. This was like the headspace of the passenger and my headspace. This was a grid. It's like not wavy face, but if your head wasn't there, and it's more of a 2D plane that goes across the car. This was just a big wavy face. These 2 dips are indicative of that single position. This was one side of the head wavy face. There's a bit less bass to your face. And this is holding the mic right where your ear would be, only 1 inch or so of movement. So as you can see, the big box kind of got a bit closer to the driver, but as we demonstrated, if you're only 6 inches away from your driver, you're getting cabin anyway. Spherical, which is kind of a more even response, and it almost equals near field. So that's how I sort of liked spherical for a long time, because it was very close to not changing your drivers and hearing through the room. It had a few tonal issues, but that's alright. So that was across the cabin. So back to the Magic Beans, they just want to correct the bass response at the main listening position and do not include the transfer from near field, because of all these really inconsistent things that happen in a pressurized space like a room. And I won't go into it too much more, it'll just sound like I'm fluffing on, but I'm just going to make my correction basically to my near field, and I'm actually going to skip main listening I think I'm gonna roll with that. So I'll just be basically testing out how my closures are working and how good the seals are in my doors and that sort of stuff. And because you can't really rely on main listening position in a car because it varies so much, like from a static mic to a broad box, and you stick any of that bass correction in and you're going to get some wonkiness. So I'm just going to go with like maybe a spherical or maybe the near field. Big box is like an average of the two, really.